It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We begin with ECOWAS, as Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tugar, has emphasized that the 50th anniversary of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, will serve as a reaffirmation of the commitment of member states to the ideals of the regional bloc. Speaking in Abuja during a media briefing with the diplomatic correspondents, Tugar highlighted Nigeria's readiness to host the anniversary celebration, which will take place in Lagos today, May 28, 2025. He said the event would not only mark 5 decades of ECOWAS's existence, but also underscore the successes recorded by the bloc despite recent challenges, including the exit of 3 member countries. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is already in Lagos to participate in the celebration of the 50th anniversary as the regional bloc marks a major milestone in its integration journey. The Lagos leg of the Golden Jubilee celebration, which was flagged off in Accra, Ghana last month, will bring together regional leaders and key stakeholders. The president, who currently chairs the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, is expected to highlight the bloc's achievements over the past 5 decades during a commemorative event at Eco Hotels and Suites. While still on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, yesterday the president formally requested the approval of the National Assembly to secure a new wave of multi-currency loans amounting to approximately $23.5 billion, 2.265 billion euro and 15 billion yuan and 757.9 billion naira. This totals about 45 trillion naira when converted. The borrowing plan, spanning multiple international lenders and development institutions, marks one of the most ambitious external financing proposals of his administration to date. Specifically, the president is seeking approval for the capital raising of up to $2 billion in the domestic debt market. This, he said, was to ensure the implementation of the presidential executive order on foreign currency denominated financial instrument local issuance program. Also, the president requested the approval of the legislative arm for the federal government's 2025-2026 external borrowing plan. The fresh borrowing plan, according to President Tinubu, would be used to finance critical projects cutting across various sectors of the economy, particularly infrastructure, health, education, water supply, among others. Now, lastly, Kola, the first son of the late billionaire businessman Moshood Kashimao Abiola, yesterday released what he described as a substantive response to the recent book released by former head of state Ibrahim Babangida, calling on the federal government to formally honor persons who were murdered or jailed under the military regime of Sani Abacha. Specifically, Kola mentioned Alhaja Kudirat Abiola, Chief Alfred Ruwane, other heroes of the Nadeko struggle, as well as journalists and activists, including Muhammad Adamu, Alao Akabashorun, Mr. Olu Akerele, Colonel Olu Bangbose, retired, Mr. Frank Kokori, amongst many others. While highlighting former President Muhammadu Buhari's role in honoring Abiola, Kola recalled that the ex-president Olusegun Obasanjo refused to recognize or honor June 12 or MKO Abiola in his 8 years of governance. He also recommended the opening of a national register of hitherto now unnamed victims of the June 12 annulment tragedy, along with a national monument to mark this phase of Nigeria's history. Arguing that Nigeria hasn't learnt any lesson from the terrible experience of June 12, he therefore recommended that an accurate June 12 history be included in the national educational curriculum. I, for one, think that is a fantastic idea. We're not doing enough to preserve and ensure that we pass on our history.
Apt of him, but I mean, Kola was apt. He wrote an op-ed, it was at the back of This Day Today, where he talked about that. He also, highlighted the fact that former military head of state, Ibrahim Babangida, did acknowledge and made, due apologies as regards the June 12th incident to the Abiola family in his book, that he just released that was talking about a journey in service. So, I mean, that's quite very apt at a point in time like this. And when you look at it, a lot of these people are not rewarded or recognized in this country enough. Look at the likes of Frank Kokori. He died in Pedro. I remember months leading up to Frank Kokori's death. It was the Delta State governor, and kudos to Governor Sheriff, that did stand up for him and helped him, with the medicals and all of that. But he finally passed in the end. There are many people that their families are still in the Seredaks of Balgata, Kauto. I still have somebody, I mention his name every time, Ambassador Musbal, that, his site, was taken away because of skirmishes around the June 12th incident. You have many people like that you need to recognize. I mean, if you have a wall of memorial, it's not too bad, where you can put their names. I'm sure there are going to be thousands and thousands of names. Goodness me, the likes of Olisa Bakoba, the likes of Ayo Bay, and the list goes on and on and on. That's a part of our history, and we must be able to inculcate it in history. As regards history, in fact, I think I saw somewhere, somebody had a picture book of June 12th, for young people. Let me go to a substantive matter. The problem is the shocking trend of debt in this country is scary. I'm not saying you don't take debt. You take debt if you want to do things. But I would like to ask this government, all these debts they have taken thus far, what have we seen? Very soon they will be celebrating 30 kilometers out of 700 kilometers coastal road, and they'll show that as triumphalism. 700 kilometers, 30 kilometers. Is that up to 4% of the total project? So what have we seen? Yes, they've done some roads here and there, but for the level of debt we are also taking, the numbers scare me. 23 billion, 15 billion yen, another couple of amount in euro. Cumulatively, that money goes to 45 trillion naira. Our current budget is over 50 trillion. That's a sizable part of our current budget. If the National Assembly approves it, and I want them to scrutinize, and I please charge everybody watching me this morning, call your lawmaker. If the National Assembly approves that money, our debt profile will go up to 197 trillion. Before President Tinubu came in, maybe we're inching close to a little 100 or over 100 trillion. Today, if we hit 187 trillion, it will be that he'd borrowed over 60 to 70 trillion in the space of 2 years. What are we doing with these monies? And that's the big question we need to answer. So the other day, when they were celebrating the fact that they've cleared IMF COVID debt of 3.2 trillion, which, go and check the records, I think the other administration started paying, and they still have the, what's they call, the residuals in interests to pay, the special drawing rights to pay. But you are going to take 45 trillion on top of it, at a time where things are bad in the country and people are not seeing the effects. In the papers recently, I saw the Attorney General say, they had recovered a lot of money, over $600 million and the likes, and they've put it in conditional cash transfer. The question is, we would like to see those that are getting the conditional cash transfer from this government. Please, if you are the very poorest in the society and getting conditional cash transfer, bring it out. As for ECOWAS, 50 years after, have we done a lot? Not too much. The economic zone is one. In 79, we brought about free movement, just 4 years after we signed the ECOWAS Treaty. In Ghana, they had a scholarship scheme. We've had many events since April. But the colonial power still raised their ugly heads. We all know some of the countries that broke out. They went to form the Association of Sahel Nations, and the push Russia is giving them, vis-a-vis that of France. We remember how when there were conversations about the ECO, we remember the role France played. We remember the fact that most of these countries, their currency is still domiciled out of France. So it's been 50 years of push and shove. I think there's a word for it. It's called dégagisme. The future of the next 50 years is what we should look at now. Some gains, some losses. I yield the floor. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning,
How
Doctor.
are you, sir?
Yeah,
Hope you didn't see the rain. Yeah, Rojo.
President Tinubu is in town. So
Okay.
my exit of town is almost effectively blocked.
Okay.
Anyway, to go to the substantive issues. Let's start with ECOWAS at 50. I've written like 3, 4, 5 articles on this subject. And it is very significant that President Tinubu is in Lagos today to mark ECOWAS at 50, because ECOWAS was created May 1975 with what was called Lagos Treaty. One of the founding fathers that is alive today is General Yakubu Gowon. And the whole idea of this regional body was to create trade facilitation to promote goodwill among the West African states. So in May 1975, 15 West African states signed the treaty. In 1977, the body became a 16-member, body. The whole idea was to have free movement of goods and services, solidarity, cooperation. In 1991, there was a declaration of principles, by the ECOWAS community of 16 states, as it then was. And what was it all about? Non-aggression against member states and the, emphasis on democratic consolidation in West Africa, in line with Article 4 sub 2 of the UN Charter. Now, so in 50 years, I think that we can talk about the success of ECOWAS. The Gusau Institute, earlier this year, organized, that's General Aliyu Gusau's Institute, organized a symposium on ECOWAS at 50. Last week, the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs organized also, a conference on ECOWAS at 50, curated, by Professor, Otubanjo. Professor Otubanjo curated that. And the whole point is that, yes, ECOWAS has served some kind of purpose, has been useful. After all, ECOWAS was in Gambia when Gambia was going to implode, in 2021. ECOWAS was in Sierra Leone. ECOWAS played a major role in Liberia, the ECOMOG mission. In other words, over the last 50 years, ECOWAS has been very instrumental in ensuring the democratic ideal in West Africa. And then the Declaration of Political Principles of 1991, however, is where the problem is. Because you now have this alliance of Sahel states. You had the democratic retreat in West Africa involving Gambia, Niger, Burkina Faso, all these countries, and Guinea to some extent. And, this is the major problem that they face. By January 29, 2025, these countries had said they were forming the alliance of Sahel states. Now, AES, they call it in French. So how do we get them back? So the big question is, what is the future of ECOWAS? President Tinubu is in Lagos, where the Lagos Treaty was signed in 1975 to celebrate ECOWAS at 50. And is even, in fact, the chairman of ECOWAS. He's doing his second term. His tenure will expire July 29, 2025. So President Tinubu being in Lagos for this ECOWAS treaty, although he may have been disturbing our movement, blocking the Bodilon route and all of that, but the major issue is about ECOWAS. I think part of the legacy that President Tinubu can leave behind is to create a pathway for how ECOWAS can be reformed. How can ECOWAS be reunited? The AES states, they may say they have left ECOWAS, but unity should be a major agenda for the current chairman of ECOWAS, who happens to be president of Nigeria. There are other issues beyond the politics and the creation, issues about funding. Many of these ECOWAS countries, they don't contribute money. They depend on Nigeria. That has to change. The ECOWAS Secretariat and the leadership has been dominated by the Francophone countries. That has to change. The Anglophone countries should also speak out stronger. 3, there should be rededication to the ideals, the 1975 ideals of ECOWAS. Okay, there's a lot more that I can say on ECOWAS. I've written so many articles on the subject, but let me leave it. Now, let me talk about Mr. Kola Abiola I think that was the other subject that you brought up. Now, Mr. Kola Abiola is simply saying that other victims of June 12 should be recognized. And I think he's right in that regard, because I also believe that those victims should be recognized. He has mentioned, he says he's offering a substantive response to the book by General Ibrahim Babangida. And he says, look, in that book, General Ibrahim Babangida, who was president for 8.5 years, did not mention the lieutenant general that made it impossible for his father to become president of Nigeria, having won the election in an election that was declared the freest and fairest in Nigeria. In other words, he accuses President Babangida of cowardice, which was also a point I made in my review of his book. When I reviewed the book on the back page of this day. 2, he's saying persons like Alaja Kudirat, his stepmother, Franco Kori, Chief Alfred Rewane, activists and journalists who suffered because of June 12 should be recognized. I think he's also right in that regard. He's also saying that a national register should be opened, which will include the names of all the victims of June 12. I think he's also right in that regard. In other words, he's saying that this is a hypocritical country. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was one of the leaders of NADECO. He led NADECO in London. He was part of the struggle in Nigeria. I think what Mr. Kola Abiola has raised is a moral question for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that you were part of the struggle. You are now president. Now do the right thing. Mr. Abiola also pointed out that President Obasanjo ignored June 12 and MKO Abiola. He's also right on that score. He said that it is he took Muhammadu Buhari from the north, from Katsina, to recognize that June 12 is important. He is also right on that score. So he has posed moral questions for President Tinubu. Where will President Tinubu, do the needful? However, on a final note, is the Abiola family even united? Don't be surprised if tomorrow, 2 days' time, you will have another person from the MKO Abiola family saying that what Kola Abiola is saying is not true. His own branch of the family, he doesn't know what they are saying and all of that. But, okay, this is Africa. Polygamy has its own contradictions. But on the issues that I think that Kola Abiola is right, I've tried to outline them. Finally, the loan. I thought they said they paid the loan we were owing IMF because of COVID. And now we are borrowing again. Okay, so what was that drama all about? Saying we have paid off our loans. Propaganda, unnecessary optics. Now the same government has written to the National Assembly to say we have to take more money. And they are not taking the money from IMF and World Bank. They are taking from Japan. They are taking from China. They are taking from Europe. They are taking from everywhere. Yen, euro, dollar, pound sterling. So if we borrow this money, some funny character from the Ministry of Finance is saying that it will not increase our debt burden. No, the truth is that it will increase our debt burden. If you borrow, you pay back. So this is money being borrowed on top of the head of my grandchildren. This is the truth. And, okay, is there justification for it? President Tinubu says, well, we have to borrow this money to address issues in critical sectors, water, transportation, infrastructure, and all of that. Yeah, President Tinubu's arguments look reasonable. They need money. Why do they need money? Oil and gas is not producing money. Revenue is down. There are issues with tax revenue. So the government is technically broke. That's why they're looking for money. They are not just going to all these international institutions to beg for money. The president even sent a second letter asking for the federal government to generate bonds to the tune of about 745, right, billion. And what is bonds? It's also debt, 45 trillion to borrow from everywhere. However, I summarize by saying this, that the issue that we are concerned about, they may have the leg room, DMO may insist that they have the leg room, transparency and accountability. When they borrow this money, we don't want to hear that they want to buy new jets. We don't want to hear that the president wants to change his official car. We want to know how that money is spent. The issue in Nigeria is always about transparency and accountability. As for the fact that they don't have money, the revenue is low. Oil price, spot price of oil has gone down. So where is the money coming from? So they have to protect themselves, states and federal government. But what will they do with the money? That is the question.
Dr. Abati, the irony in this is that the states have been able to reduce a lot of their debt burden to a large extent, but the federal continues to balloon and balloon their debt. Sometimes when we comment on some of the statements, it seems like we are skeptical. But truly, when the announcement was made around the cancellation or the full payment of the legacy debt, as it was called, there's a reason why there were a lot of questions around it, why there was a lot of investigation around it, because we knew that there was a looming announcement around more debt to come. Now, what are the implications of this? 52.7% is the increase that it will cause in our external debt burden. We're currently sitting at about $45 billion, so this will take us to $69.9 billion of debt. If you look at the International Development Association, we're currently the third most indebted nation to that World Bank's IDA in the world. We are third, Bangladesh is first, Pakistan is second, I believe. Now, why is this worrying? It's worrying because if this particular loan is approved and we do take it, it pushes us to our threshold of 40% debt to GDP ratio. Why are these thresholds created? These thresholds are created because we analyze the economy and we say at this point is where this debt becomes unsustainable, it becomes a risk to other areas of the economy, and generally it makes running our fiscal a little bit more complicated. So this loan will take us to that 40%. Now, the irony is that today we're talking about ECOWAS. That 40% is also what the threshold that one cannot surpass if one is to enjoy the macroeconomic convergence that will create a single currency for ECOWAS. So that also puts that at further risk. Now, what are we worried about? We're worried about the fact that for now, it has been said that this borrowing is towards infrastructure, towards health, towards various developments. But the worry is that government-led infrastructure development does not necessarily lead to real value. Now, if this was going directly into the productive sector, then we may say, well, there's some marginal room. But we need to evolve from this model of borrowing for infrastructure and pursue other models. There are private-public partnerships. There are a number of other models that one can pursue in order to try and balance Nigeria's infrastructural debt. And then also this philosophy that we need to build roads and bridges in order to make Nigeria a wealthy place and in order for the masses to begin to enjoy the fruits of the economy is also a fallacy to a large extent. Yes, they do enhance ease of doing business. Yes, they do make life easier. But the honest truth is if you and I are hungry, we cannot go and eat the road or eat the bridge. We certainly cannot. We need things that translate into tangible value into the pockets of all Nigerians. So these are the worries around it. The other worry is that as this goes into the National Assembly, just yesterday we were talking about whether this assembly is rubber stamp or not. The PDP have released a statement to say they will mobilize their members both in the Senate and in the House of Reps to try and push back against this particular proposal. But the question is, if this is put to a voice vote, we won't even know who voted. We won't even know whether truly a majority voted in favor of passing this legislation. So the process through which we're going is also challenging because we're plunging ourselves into this level of multi-generational debt, if I may create that statement today, without any accountability, without any recourse, because tomorrow we can't even face our lawmakers and confront them directly and say, did you vote A or nay? There's no record of it. So that process in itself also needs to be questioned and it needs to be reformed, because I do believe that the National Assembly actually has the technology. The technology is there. It's already installed within the Senate and the House of Reps to be able to record people's votes. Now, very lastly, I know we just have a few seconds on ECOWAS. We need to remember that ECOWAS was created during the golden era of West Africa. This is the time when Pan-Africanism was popular. This is the time where we were enjoying a great economic boost. This is the era where even West African art and culture, Afrobeat, Fela Kuti's music was the pulse of the world and the pulse of the culture, the pulse of this region. Where are we now? Where have we gone from those Pan-African ideals that led to the creation of this organization? If you look at ECOWAS now, the major reason for the pullout of the countries that have pulled out is because they're saying that ECOWAS is not an Afrocentric organization. So I hope as the heads of state converge to mark this 50-year anniversary, they can ask themselves real and genuine questions about whether ECOWAS is truly a Pan-African, Afrocentric organization that is serving the people of West Africa. There is SADC in Southern Africa. There's the East African Community in Eastern Africa. ECOWAS is supposed to be the organization that represents the giant community of Africa. Is that what it stands for? Those are the conversations I hope that will be had during this time. It's not a time for festivity. There's not much to celebrate. It's a time to set agendas for us to be able to move West Africa and Africa as a whole forward.